Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Russian attack in Ukraine has killed 2 people and injured 33 in Kharkiv region of Ukraine. This comes as talks from yesterday between Russia and Ukraine did not result in any ceasefire amid continuation of war. Meanwhile, a plane crash has been reported in the far east of Russia. With no report of survivors, the Soviet-era plane allegedly went off the signal with no contact until found by helicopter. Israel says it is assessing a response from Hamas on the recent ceasefire proposal amid continued military action in Gaza. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has said that Gaza is facing a man-made mass starvation after a warning from over 100 aid agencies. Israel says it will continue to study Hamas's response to Gaza's ceasefire plan as the war continues and hunger strikes on the population within the Strip. Australian and United Kingdom's defense ministers and foreign ministers are to hold bilateral talks tomorrow in Sydney. This visit coincides with the Australian largest war games and the first British carrier group visit in 30 years. During Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit cutting tariffs on whiskey, cars and textiles while expanding market access, the deal has finalized in May. After 3 years of talks, marks the UK's biggest post-Brexit trade agreement. This year, Hungary has banned the Pride March of June, which Budapest Mayor Gargly Karacsony attended. And this march later turned into an anti-government protest. Now, a police investigation is taking place, targeting the LGBTQ+ rights rally, making the mayor a suspect. Greece has said it will be sending a salvage ship to the Red Sea amid recent Houthi attacks. This move is to protect and assist seafarers and global shipping, according to the local shipping minister. The move also follows the 2 ships that were recently sank off by Houthi group. Tensions have sharply escalated along the Thailand-Cambodia border, with deadly exchanges in the disputed Emerald Triangle. Following Cambodian rocket attacks that killed at least 12 people in Thailand's Sisaket province, Bangkok launched airstrikes against Cambodian military targets. Thailand's acting Prime Minister Phumtham Vechayachai addressed the crisis after an emergency security meeting, describing the situation as just a conflict and not a declaration of war. He condemned Cambodia's use of heavy weaponry but emphasized that Thailand hopes to resolve the dispute through dialogue. Let's listen in to what the acting Prime Minister had to say.
นะครับสิ่งที่สำคัญก็คือการยิงของกัมพูชาได้ใช้อาวุธหนักในการยิงเข้ามาในเขตแดนของประเทศโดยไม่มีเป้าหมายที่ชัดเจนยิงเข้ามาในเขตที่มีเกี่ยวข้องกับพลเรือนแล้วก็มีพลเรือนของเราเสียชีวิตนะครับทั้งหมดขณะนี้ตัวเลขล่าสุดคือ11คนนะครับเป็นพลเรือน10คนเป็นทหาร1คนนะครับแล้วก็มีผู้บาดเจ็บ28คนอันนี้เราประณามว่ามีการใช้อาวุธหนักที่รุนแรงไม่มีเป้าหมายนะครับแล้วไม่ได้จำกัดเฉพาะเขตการต่อสู้นะครับเป็นการยิง
Meanwhile, Cambodia has accused Thailand of unprovoked aggression and called for a UN Security Council session. China and UNICEF have urged restraint and protection of civilians as tensions remain high. Now we are joined by Raju B. Wanwani. He's a spokesperson and VP VHP of Thailand, former Director, India Thai Chamber of Commerce, Thailand. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, both countries are accusing each other of provocation. So what are the underlying causes of this conflict?
Yeah, like you said, see, in every conflict, the first victim or the first casualty is always the truth. So you will never know who fired the first shot. Although in this case, the 2 landmines where 2 Thai soldiers were injured, very badly injured, would have been the starting point. And that is where the conflict has started, in my opinion. Although in May, earlier this year in May, there was some cross-border firing in which one Cambodian soldier had died, and which led to the talk between the Thai Prime Minister and the Cambodian President of the Senate, Hun Sen. And that was, unfortunately, the recording of the conversation was leaked, which was pretty bad. Now, you see, Thailand has never been occupied. It's always been independent, never been occupied by any European powers. Cambodia, on the other hand, was occupied by the French. And the border between Thailand and Cambodia was demarcated by the French. Thailand has always disputed this, and this dispute is continuing. And the present dispute is along some ancient temples, some ancient Hindu temples, one of them prominently being Pre Vihar temple, a Hindu temple. And these skirmishes have always been around the area of the temple and the surrounding areas. Cambodia has gone to the UN and the International Court of Justice, although Thailand does not allow the relevance of the International Court of Justice in this matter. So Thailand has refused to go to those international forums. So it's basically a land dispute of some ancient temples.
And also earlier we saw that China asked for peace in this region. So what role can regional powers like China and ASEAN play in easing tensions here?
Well, China does have a strong influence in this part of the world, both in Cambodia and in Thailand. But even without China, in my personal opinion, and I hope I'm right, this will fizzle out. And the earlier it fizzles out, the better it is, with lesser loss of property and human lives. Today, as you have noted in the news, Cambodia has been firing missiles randomly. They have been affected civilian areas and caused deaths of civilian lives. Whereas Thailand has been more, I would say, disciplined and basically attacked the army and the military bases of Cambodia. So I think, in my opinion, I hope it will fizzle out very soon.
And now both Thailand and Cambodia have dug in their positions, with Cambodia calling for a UN Security Council meeting. Do you think what diplomatic measures could be effective in halting this cycle of violence there?
You see, besides, as you mentioned China earlier, the other aspect that you should not ignore is the fact that both of these countries are part of the ASEAN. And Thailand is a very, very prominent member of the ASEAN. So I'm sure those authorities and the other countries of ASEAN will join in and try to firstly stop the violence and try to get the two countries to come to an amicable solution where there is a peaceful, if not acceptable to both sides, solution. I'm sure there will be. And of course, there's a gentleman around the world who goes around saying that he's solved all the wars in the world. So I think maybe he might step in too.
Yes, we hope so. Thank you very much, Raju B. Manwani, for joining us and sharing your insight as a former Director, India-Thai Chamber of Commerce. Now we move on to our next news. A Russian plane with about 50 people on board has crashed in the country's far east. Earlier, there were reports that the Antonov AN-24 passenger plane disappeared about 16 kilometers from its destination in the Amur region. Later, the burning wreckage of the Angara Airlines flight carrying 42 passengers and 6 crew was spotted on the ground by a helicopter. The Antonov AN-24 passenger plane had left the city of Blagoveshchensk on Thursday and was en route to Tinda, a remote town in the Amur region bordering China. One of the few footages from the scene showed the plane crash in a densely forested area with smoke rising from the site. pilot error during landing in poor weather conditions, or technical malfunction are being considered as possible causes. An investigation into the cause of the crash has also been announced. Speaking on the crash, here's what the Chief Assistant Prosecutor responsible for transport in the Russian Far East, Elena Krasnoyarova, has said. We will move on to our guest discussion for this news with Martin Sai-Reitz. He's a foreign affairs expert, joins us live from Ecuador. Thank you, Martin, for joining us as always. Thank you very much. Good to see you. Now, given the ongoing issues, Now, given the ongoing issues with aging aircraft and poor maintenance, should Russia be held accountable for continuing to operate outdated planes like this one?
So I think this horrible crash of this airplane is under investigation by the authorities of Russia. Right now, I think it's too early to speculate about this situation being the cause of any Ukrainian defensive or offensive operation. This is under investigation. It's very tragic, and I think we need to be very cautious in what the development of the situation is going on. We don't have official reports of the reason behind this tragic event.
And Martin, what does this incident say about the country's aviation safety standards? Martin?
Sorry,
Yeah. Martin, could you hear me?
Can you repeat it?
Yes.
Yes.
So what does this say about Russia's aviation safety standards while it's raging on war and has new rockets and it's firing towards Ukraine?
Basically, we've seen examples of how the aviation system of Russia has not been the best in the last couple of months. The first huge attack from Ukraine was the damage of the Russian drones in Russian territory. I think Russia has a huge failure in its defensive system in aviation, and now we're seeing another unfortunate example by this plane crash. So I think Russia is not in their best position right now.
And Martin, how confident can the international community be in the integrity and thoroughness of this investigation?
Well, this is a very interesting topic because Russia has a lot of history of not sharing information, that only gives them, is only for their own interests. So I think Russia is not to be taken very serious in the sense of trusting what the Russian government is saying. I don't think they will accept that they have a failure in their capabilities, but yeah, I don't think Russia is the best example for trusting about the information and the disclosure of critical information.
Thank you very much, Martin, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we'll come back to you for another discussion. Before we move on, let's listen in to what the Chief Assistant Prosecutor responsible for transport in the Russian Far East, Elena Krasnoyarova, has said.
Сегодня около 13 часов по времени Амурской области ушел с радаров самолет Ан-24, выполнявший рейс Хабаровск-Благовещенск-Тында авиакомпании «Ангара». При заходе на посадку в аэропорту Тында самолет ушел на второй круг, после чего связь с ним была утеряна. Место падения самолета установлено. Обстоятельства происшествия.
Russian forces have attacked the city of Kharkiv, injuring at least 39 people, including 6 children. Among the victims of the attack is 1-month-old infant who suffered an acute stress reaction, as per reports. 6 people, including 2 children, remain hospitalized following the attack. A 17-year-old boy and a 1-year-old girl are in moderate condition now, while the one woman is reported to be in serious condition, according to Governor Ole Hubov. Reports suggest that 2 Russian glide bombs struck the Shevchenkivskyi district at around 11:30 a.m. local time, targeting a high-rise residential building and civilian enterprise. Now we're joined by Glenn Grant. He's an ex-advisor to Ukrainian Defense Minister, joining us live from Latvia. Thank you, Grant, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, what was the point of yesterday's talks if the attacks are continuing like this?
Sorry, say that again. What was the point of
Yesterday's Istanbul talks between Ukraine and Russia?
well, there was no point in the talks yesterday to do with the war. What there was always the opportunity for the Ukrainian side to try and increase the prisoner exchange, and also to raise the subject of trying to get back the children that have been stolen from the occupied territories, because Russia continues to take them and put them all over the country because they have a birth rate problem, basically. And that was the only thing that Ukraine wanted. But Russia has no intention of looking for peace at all, and it only sent a second class group of people, men in suits, you might say, just so that they could say they went and that they were trying. But of course they weren't trying. And today's attack on Kharkiv shows exactly how little they care about peace, and how much Russia intends to carry on with its sort of terrorist type attacks on civilian infrastructure.
And now, how effective is Ukraine's coordination with Western allies been in this regard?
Well, it doesn't make any difference, actually. Ukraine is trying hard to keep as close as it can to Western allies. I mean, there are huge amounts of relationship work going on all the time, but that doesn't have any effect on the battle, because the West is not involved in actually stopping the fight. It's just involved in giving equipment. And we know from recent weeks that there are huge problems with air defense equipment, and so Russia is just looking for whatever it can see as the weakest targets. And of course, Sumy and Kharkiv and Kherson are three cities that are very, very close to the front line. Kharkiv is less than 40 kilometers away, so it's actually within drone reach, and drones are flying over Kharkiv constantly.
And do you think, how can Ukraine leverage these alliances with EU to better protect its civilian population?
That is a very, very hard question to answer at the moment. I mean, yes, I don't know if you've read up, but yesterday Ukraine passed a law which basically took the two anti-corruption organizations under national control. And the EU today has been extremely outspoken about the fact that the anti-corruption organizations should keep their independence. So there's Zelensky will have had a hard smack on the hand from the European Union and America today for breaking this independence part of anti-corruption, and that will actually have an effect on some things to do with supply and support. It cannot not have an effect. So he's got to change that law back to give the independence again to the organizations, or Ukraine will suffer in general from reduced support.
Thank you very much, Glenn Grant, for joining us and sharing your expertise as an ex-advisor to Ukrainian Defense Minister. Now we move on to our next news. As the Beijing summit continues, EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen has said that China's ties with Russia would be the determining factor in relations between the bloc and Beijing. EU leaders, including European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa, have emphasized the significant role China plays in influencing Russia and its responsibility to push for a ceasefire in the ongoing conflict. They urged China to avoid exploring dual-use goods to Russia and to use its position in the UN Security Council to advocate for peace. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Martin Tsai-Reitz. He's a foreign affairs expert. Thank you, Martin, for staying with us. Now, China's close ties with Russia have come under intense scrutiny with EU leaders. So, how, given China's consistent refusal to condemn Russia's actions, its role in facilitating Moscow's military capabilities in Ukraine, can China truly be considered a neutral player in this conflict?
I think, in wording logistically, the Russians and I think the European Union is focusing in having partnership with countries that they feel they share the same values. So right now, what we're seeing is that the European Union has a strong tie with China in an economical level, and this economical and trade level can be put in a question by the shared values that these two regions of the world share in common.
And now, while China is pressed, EU presses China, but Europe still continues to support Ukraine in selling or with the weapons. So do you think this EU is doing enough from its stance to, or do you think that EU's efforts are increasingly fragmented?
Of course, the European Commission is doing its best to support the interest of its territory by supporting Ukraine, and at the same time not losing a strong partner like China. Even though they have a trade partnership, China also poses a threat in global trade with the European Union. We need to remember that Germany used to be the leading country in car distribution, and now China is ruling that, leading that role. And I'm seeing right now in the next couple of months and years a deterioration between the relationship between China and the European Union.
Thank you, Martin, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion. Amid a relentless heat wave gripping on the region, a devastating wildfire swept through southern Cyprus, leaving 2 people dead and forcing the evacuation of hundreds. The fast-moving blaze destroyed several homes and posed a serious threat to multiple communities, as firefighters battled to bring the flames under control. Firefighters were struggling to contain the blaze after it erupted in mountainous terrain north of the southern city of Limassol midday. Meanwhile, authorities continued to struggle to evacuate people trapped in the village of Lo Phu, about 26 kilometers from Limassol. Temperatures across the island soared to a scorching 43 degrees Celsius, prompting the Cyprus Meteorological Department to issue an amber weather alert. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Martin Tsai-Reitz. Thank you, Martin, for staying with us. Now, this devastating wildfire in Cyprus is fueled by a brutal heat wave. So, in light of climate change and increasingly severe weather events, what should governments and global organizations do to improve wildfire preparedness?
I think this tragedy is an outcome of global warming, and actually the European Union should support Cyprus in this terrible disgrace, since the European Union has been aware long before that countries like Cyprus are in a huge danger of this type of disgraces, natural disgraces, due to its geographic location. I think it's the responsibility of the European Union to support logistically and with budget to the disgrace.
Thank you very much, Martin Tsai-Reitz, for joining us and sharing your expertise as a foreign affairs expert. Now we move on to our next news. India has been warned by India's aviation regulator. It could face enforcement action for breaching safety standards related to crew fatigue, management, and training, as per reports. The airline self-reported the problems which occurred this year and last year to the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, just days after one of its Boeing 787 Dreamliners crashed in Ahmedabad city, killing 260 people. 4 government notices dated July 23rd criticized Air India for repeated failures in safety compliance and follow many other warnings in the past. Potential regulatory action could include fines or ordering that executives be removed from their jobs. The notices cite a combined 29 violations, including pilots not being given mandatory rest, poor compliance with simulator training requirements, lack of training for a high-altitude airport, and flying on international routes with insufficient cabin crew. Now let's have a look at some stories from the world of Indo-Pacific. The United Nations has accused Taliban authorities of committing serious human rights abuses, including torture and arbitrary detention against Afghans forcibly returned by Iran and Pakistan. So far in 2025, more than 1.9 million Afghans have been deported, mostly from Iran amid large-scale campaigns. The UN highlighted that vulnerable groups such as women, former government affiliates, media workers, and civil society members face heightened risks of reprisals. With up to 3 million expected to return this year, Afghanistan continues to grapple with a severe humanitarian crisis. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has urged his military to be prepared for real war at any time, according to Pyongyang state media. Observing a recent artillery firing contest, Kim stressed the importance of being capable of destroying the enemy in every battle. This comes amid reports of North Korea deploying troops and weapons to support Russia's ongoing offensive in Ukraine. The exact location of the military exercise was not disclosed. China praised a positive advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice declaring that countries have a legal obligation to address climate change. The court described climate change as an urgent and existential threat and warned that failing to meet climate commitments could lead to reparations. While the advisory opinion is not legally binding, it holds significant political and legal influence. China emphasized the ruling reflects the views of many developing nations and supports global climate cooperation. Indonesian authorities have arrested 2 foreigners accused of smuggling cocaine into the popular tourist island of Bali. A 25-year-old Brazilian man was caught with over 3 kilograms of cocaine hidden in his luggage after arriving from Dubai. On the same day, a 32-year-old South African woman was arrested for carrying nearly 1 kilogram of cocaine concealed in her underwear. Both suspects reportedly expected payment for delivering the drugs. Indonesia has extremely strict drug laws, and convicted smugglers are sometimes executed by firing squad. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring